My.
Hello and welcome to All the Things. I am Monique Dusan.
I'm Krista Bontrager, also known as Theology Mom, and this is the show where we discuss all the things.
All the things related to God, the Bible, and real life. Yes, people. Welcome to Saturday. Not that you weren't already in Saturday,
yes.
But for me, Saturday starts at 6 o'clock.
Well, welcome, and helping us on the show tonight and every night and every day is the one and only Bob Bontrager, sporting his Burnside Lake hat. That's right. Bonus points if anyone knows where Burnside Lake is.
I say somewhere in Oregon.
Nope.
Okay, well then I wouldn't know.
Okay, so tonight's moderators.
I was going to do that too.
Oh, sorry.
Tonight's moderators are Laura Hartley and Haley Lewis.
Yes, and we are live tonight. So let us know that you are watching. It's going to be a wild and rollicking ride.
Somebody should have told me I wasn't ready. Yeah.
You can also post your questions and comments as we go along. And we will try to incorporate those into our discussion. We have a pretty interesting discussion planned for tonight. We want to say hello to everyone watching. Natalie from Miami, Florida. Welcome. Hey, Jessica. Jessica's on a road trip. Jessica's our clip girl. So if you ever enjoy our short clips on social media, she's the gal.
Awesome. Yes, she is. Now, we were just in South Carolina, Jermaine. We were just in Spartanburg.
Yes.
How did I not meet you? Now, I don't know if you're near Spartanburg or not, but still, we were just in South Carolina.
Oh, my word. Yente's on the stream.
Won't he do it? Look at the Lord. Yes. What's up, Andre?
All right. So let us know you're watching and join the fun and frivolity.
I don't know about the whole frivolity thing.
Oh.
I'm trying my best to just do the regular thing. I feel like the frivolity, that's extra. I don't know if we paid for that.
You're always extra.
Well.
All right. This is your opportunity to also support the show. Click on that share button, interact, click on the like button. I know we always say this, but it's so important because that is how YouTube and Facebook measure the value of our content. And so when you do those things to interact with posts, to interact with the show, that it lets the Facebook tech gods know that our content has value. So thank you for doing that.
All right. So
are you going to read the cue sheets?
Yeah, probably I should. You guys, it's been a long Saturday. Tonight's show is brought to you by the Center for Biblical Unity, Family 210 Clothing, Impact 360, and Birmingham Theological Society.
And seminary. That's where we go to seminary.
Birmingham Theological Seminary. What did I say? Society? You guys, it's the struggle is real for me.
Okay. All right. Well, let's try to get on track here. All right. Let's look at our Design of the Week from Family 210 Clothing. We've got one of my favorites, All Shades Are Beautiful. It's one of my favorite designs, probably because I designed it, based on Psalm 139, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Go check out family210.com, and about $10 of every shirt and every piece of merch sold helps to go help our ministry, or depending on what you buy, goes to help our family. Mm-hmm. So, all right, well, so what's happening in your life? Why are you so tired? Distracted?
I don't know. Like I have a little bit of a headache, and I'm just a little sleepy, and I don't even know. Now I'm still here for all the fun and all the shenanigans, but I am still just kind of like, what's going on tonight? You know
what?
Out of all of it, though, I am super excited to share with people that Krista learned a new song this week. She learned, now if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you're about to get educated. She learned Jesus is on the main line. Now, if you know the song, Jesus is on the main line, in the chat, put the next sentence. Jesus is on the main line. What's the next sentence? I know you should know.
I have no idea.
You listened to it twice.
That doesn't mean I'll remember. I got to listen to a song about 100 times before it gets to me. How does it go? How does it go? Sing a few bars.
No, I'm not singing a few bars.
Why?
Because I'm waiting for somebody to put it in the chat. Has anyone heard of the song Jesus is on the main line?
I don't know if there's.
We will see. We will
right.
see. Somebody has to know this. I can't be the only person to know Jesus is on the main line.
I think this might be a black church song.
So there's black people. It's not a black. I put a song on my profile this week, and it was not Richard Smallwood. It was Hallelujah, Salvation and Glory, Honor and Power unto the Lord our God. And I was surprised. I thought surely that's just a black song, and like a cultural, like within a cultural distinguishing song.
Yeah, that's how we should say
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And so I just thought, that song is going to be here in this culture. And there were so many white people on there like, oh my gosh, I love that song. That's my jam. And I was like, okay. You see what happens when you limit things like songs or, music to only one group of people.
I did find a version of Jesus is on the Main Line sung by the Bill Gaither singers.
And that should not happen ever in life. That was a mistake.
It's a lot slower than the black version.
It was bad. Candy says, this must be a black American thing. Black Jamaican Canadian is clueless. Jesus is on the main line. Tell him what you want. Just call him up and tell him what you want. And I remember being a little kid and singing that song. Now, I don't know if it's theologically correct or not, but
I wish it wouldn't violate copyright so we could hum a few bars here. Okay, let's get into our topic for tonight. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yes.
Okay, so you and I always brainstorming topics, trying to think about, what people want to know about.
This was my topic.
Yeah. So tell us some thoughts about what we're talking about, why we're talking about it.
So tonight we're talking about justice or injustice and looking at real life things that are unjust from our perspective, and with biblical support that occur every day in society, but no one really blinks an eye at it.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I feel like we get so many times when we are on the road is this, well, how do you work this out practically? How do you do justice in regards to racial inequities? And my first comment is, well, do you have proof that there are racial inequities and racial disparities and things like that, or are you going off of someone's feelings,
or that those disparities are unjust?
Yes,
that's the point. Yeah.
And how are we defining how do we define injustice? How do we define justice? And then move forward from there? Is there a biblical warrant to say that this is a biblical injustice? Like the fact that there might be more white people in an organization than there are minorities, many would say is an injustice. We need to work toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. And my question is, well, what's your warrant for saying that it's an injustice?
Yeah,
what's the evidence?
What's the standard? And I think that in our effort to, when we're on social media, we're always kind of pushing back against the critical social theories. I think there can be a perception about you and I as a ministry that all we care about is just critiquing and pushing back against critical social theory and critical social justice, but that we don't want to be remiss in our efforts to clearly articulate the biblical case for biblical justice and a biblical standard. So we've each chosen, we're supposed to choose.
We're each supposed to choose
three
issues within society that we see as an injustice.
A current injustice. We're not talking about historical injustices. We're talking about right now, in the here and now. And this is not an exhaustively complete list. This is just 6 things that we have picked between us. I picked 3, you picked 3.
I actually only picked 2.
Oh, so you're already going for like a C- in the class, or what's happening here?
Well, I just figured that mine are so good, it's going to take a lot of time, and so I just did 2.
All right, got
it. No, I think I took a nap. I'm sorry.
Well, I have 3. I fulfilled the homework assignment.
Yes.
So, but I think that this will be illustrative for people because I think that you and I walk around thinking all the time, well, this is an injustice according to the Bible, but we don't hear people talking about it.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of bring some of those issues out in the forefront today. So, okay.
All right. You want to go first?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go first. And This is something that I think is really important. It'll kind of set the stage even for the discussion more broadly. And that is what I'm going to call the 3-tiered justice system.
Yes. Now, I have a question for you right off the bat before you even jump in. In looking at the 3-tiered justice system, are you going to offer a biblical definition for what justice is biblically? Okay, good. Just making sure you're on the right track, girl.
I got receipts.
Oh, goodness.
I got biblical receipts.
Here we go. We might be here for a while. Y'all get your popcorn. Yeah.
So I think that this is something, one of the reasons I picked this is because this is an issue that you've really helped me understand better. And I think that if you and I were to write a book on justice, I think that this would be like a whole chapter in the book and it's just sort of a foundational issue. But I have to admit that I had no understanding or awareness of the different tiers of the justice system that have been faced historically by minorities and in your experience in the Black community specifically. I really had never thought about it. And when you and I first started having discussions, you were like, oh yeah, well, justice is completely upside down and there's one set of rules for Black people and there's one different set of rules for white people. And I was like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're even talking about. And
I don't know that I would hold that position so strongly today.
And we're going to talk about some shifts on that.
I want to put that in early so people don't start thinking like, what? Da, 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 da. No, that was like 5 years ago when we first started having these conversations. Today, my thoughts have definitely shifted. Maybe not in all aspects, because I do think that some parts of the justice system really do need to be looked at. But I definitely don't hold the position that you're referring to now.
Right. So I'm glad for that clarification. Yeah. But I think some principles of what you said are still true as I've examined it closer and thought about it in light of scripture. So what I mean by a 3-tiered justice system is really that there's just different sets of rules and punishments depending on who you are and what group you belong to. So top tier is, I would say, and this is, again, like if I were going to write a book chapter on this topic, this is roughly how I'd organize it. Is a top tier is the corporate and the political elite. This is like the tier 1 of justice. And this is when justice often is what they say, there's a rush to play, let's make a deal with corporate and political elite. Let's keep people out of jail. Let's make a deal. Corporate bailouts for the rich. Politicians avoiding jail time.
Or their children.
We won't mention any names because...
Just look forward and act like I didn't say nothing.
Yeah. So, but this is the tier 1 justice, is that there is a standard of justice that if you belong to these certain classes of the rich, the powerful, the elite, the politically elite, the corporate elite, there is a different standard of justice for you than for the regular people.
And I even would venture to say that I can see that across skin color lines.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that our thinking has evolved on this over the last few years, is that it's not a racial divide. It's a wealth, poverty, power divide. Class divide. Okay.
Did you get new glasses?
No.
Okay, sorry. A
couple months ago.
Sorry. Excuse me.
It's very observant. Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Continuing. All right, so then we've got, that's the top tier. Then the middle tier, because normally you hear about it like the 2-tiered system. I kind of have a 3 tiers. So the middle tier is, I would say, leniency and merciful prosecutions for certain people. So this is reserved for regular people, but maybe they have some degree of wealth and privilege, or maybe they belong to a particular class. But there's usually like this kind of rush to treat people in this tier with compassion and mercy. Historically speaking, this has been white people. I think, I'm going to put it out there as a thought experiment, that there's a shift currently happening toward minorities in this class, that there is this shift toward, in the the middle tier of leniency and merciful prosecutions?
Say more.
Well, thinking about, and maybe this is a poverty division more than a racial division, but this idea of the critical justice theory of, normalizing theft and normalizing turning certain things that would be felonies into misdemeanors, or we're not going to prosecute them because of historical injustices, so we're not going to prosecute. We're going to have leniency and compassion toward people in these particular racial categories or in these particular minority groups.
Yeah,
I don't know. Do you think I'm way off on that?
No, I don't think you're way off on that at all, actually. I honestly do think that because of critical criminology and looking at criminals in certain lights and things like that, you do get this sense of, well, if they're a criminal, we don't want to marginalize them. And so there are certain ways in which the judicial system handles criminals. Now, it could be a class thing. So it would be interesting to look at whether or not, in like certain parts of Tennessee or Appalachia where it's extreme poverty, if the criminals there also, are not getting off, but may be able to slide through on lesser sentences or things like that because they don't want to marginalize them? Or is that something where we don't want to marginalize criminals who are black and brown?
Yeah.
My honest thought is that it's probably the latter, where we don't want to criminalize those who are black and brown.
I think historically, though, there could be a case that the this middle tier, second tier justice was slanted toward white people, and this is where we get the idea of white privilege. But I think it's an arguable point as to whether or not that's still the case.
Yeah, this middle tier reminds me of the Just Mercy movie.
Yeah.
Where in the South, there were all of these crimes that were being blamed on blacks, even if they were done by whites, or if there was a suspicion that a black person committed a crime, they were arrested and not given due process, and then ended up in jail for years, sometimes on truly erroneous, or made up cases.
Yeah. So again, we're talking about the three-tier justice system. This is my number one of, an injustice that's just sort of out there. And there's just different sets of rules and punishments depending on who you are. I said the top tier is the corporate and political elite. The middle tier is leniency and merciful prosecutions. I think that currently is slanting towards certain minority groups. And then the bottom tier is what I would say is the poor and working class people. Now, historically, again, this I think has been black and brown people, maybe possibly some poor white people. But I think this level, this bottom tier, can also include what is called predatory prosecution, where the prosecutions are targeted toward a particular group. Going back to the Just Mercy example of, we got to round up some black people, we got to target some black people. This is predatory prosecutions.
Would you think that something like over-policing would be included in that?
In the reading that I did, that's where they would put it, is in this category of over-policing would be in the bottom tier. I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that either.
So this is my spin on this. I'm not saying I got this from a sociological textbook. I took the three-tiered idea from sociology, but then I'm looking at it in light of what I'm seeing, and I'm kind of tweaking it a little bit. But yes, sociologists put over-policing in this bottom tier.
Yeah.
And they would say this is exclusively the problem of black and brown people. I don't think I buy that. I think that this is people, I'm going to say something a little controversial. I think that Christians could end up being in this bottom tier where there's predatory prosecution. I think we could be headed that way. Christian families that have traditional values and traditional definitions of family foster parents who are Christians could be targeted. I think that could be part of this bottom tier. Okay. I don't know. Do you buy that? Do you think that there's
no? I definitely think that a targeted approach to how we persecute Christians could lead to that bottom tier thought process. I don't necessarily agree with over policing, because over policing is an entirely different conversation. Why
I'm not putting that there.
Okay, yeah. All right.
But I'm just saying, if people go online and they look it up, that's where over policing will be. Yeah. So, all right, scriptures. Let's look at a few scriptures. I'm going to have Bob put them up on the screen here. We're just going to go through a very few number of verses, starting in Exodus chapter 23. It says, "You shall not spread a false report." So if we're going to have a biblical view of justice, it starts off with truth telling. It starts off with not lying. You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. In other words, you're not going to prop up criminals by lying on the stand. You shall not fall in with many to do evil. You shall not bear false witness in a lawsuit, siding with the many so as to pervert justice. So if you want to know God's definition of perverting justice, it's lying. That's a big part of it. You shall not be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. So we've got to weigh evidence truthfully, accurately, without partiality. All right, Bob, you can scroll down there. There should be some more scriptures. Continuing in Exodus 23, dropping down to verses 6 to 8. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in this lawsuit. Keep far from a false charge. Do not kill the innocent or the righteous, for I will not acquit the wicked. You shall take no bribes. This is the big one for me. I think that many aspects of our justice system are swimming in the problems of bribery in one form or another. For a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the cause of those who are in the right. All right, scroll down a little bit more to Deuteronomy, chapter 1, verse 17. You shall not be partial in judgment. You shall hear the small and the great alike. Friends, this is really the foundation of not only biblical justice, but historically of our justice system. And that is of impartiality, weighing evidence truthfully, accurately, carefully, fairly, without partiality. If this goes away, then we are drifting away not only from American justice, but from biblical justice. I asked Bob to put up an image here of Lady Justice. If you've ever seen this image, I want to explain this image to you so that you can really appreciate what it means from a biblical point of view and the tight connection between biblical justice and our justice system. So Lady Justice, if you notice, she's wearing a blindfold. Why does she wear a blindfold? And I want you to explain this to your children. It's because she weighs evidence on the scales impartially. She weighs it blindly. She doesn't give favoritism to the poor or the rich. So this three-tier justice system is completely against God's standards, okay? If you've ever heard the expression of putting the thumb on the scale of justice, that is to weigh something in a weighted way, not an impartial way. It's to put the thumb on the scale there, to weigh more heavily in favor of someone based on their class or maybe their race or what have you. I also want you to notice the sword in her hand. If we were to look up Romans chapter 13, we would read that God has appointed the government to wield the source of justice on his behalf, to be his servant or his deacon for justice. So Lady Justice, she weighs evidence blindly. This is what we ought to do because this is what God does. God is impartial. And so he wants us to be impartial. But then Lady Justice wields the sword to inflict punishments based on that evidence. It's a powerful symbol of our justice system with deep connections to Scripture.
Yeah, and when I see that symbol, it makes me think about just how far we are from that today.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of feel like Lady Liberty has her, not Lady Liberty, Lady Justice has her blindfold on, but then she's like playing peekaboo.
Yeah, and then there's a thumb on the scale. Yeah.
Who's really before you? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And who does the sword really get wielded against?
Yeah.
And when is she not wielding the sword?
When the sword gets wielded against the bottom tier in a predatory prosecution, that's unjust.
Yeah.
According to God's standards.
And when, the top tier don't receive the due punishment for their crime, that is also unjust.
That is also unjust.
Yeah.
So that's my number one.
Okay.
Bob, can you text Abby?
I already did.
My batteries.
I already did.
Oh, you already saw it?
I already did. Yeah.
I think it's up in the bedroom.
Just we have a computer that's dying. Don't worry, people. It's their main one.
It's all fine. It's the one running the teleprompter.
Don't worry.
All right. So let's go. That was my number one. So let's go to your number one.
My number one is payday loan places.
Okay.
And we talk about this whenever we travel.
Oh, yes.
We're always like, oh, look, there's a payday loan place. Oh, what does that mean about the demographic of the community and things like that?
They're always in communities. It's interesting. When we go to affluent areas, we don't see payday loan places. But we always know that we're in a lower economic area. There's laundromats, payday loan places, pawn shops.
Now, I think the affluent payday loan place is like the cash for gold.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, there are, like, I'm not saying that, affluent communities are completely excluded from the need for a payday loan place. Like, you might have, be down on your luck or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's like the cash for gold places in the more sedity areas.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk about payday loan places because I believe that they are predatory in their approach to the poor, in their approach to humans in general, but they especially target the poor. And so what we find is this exorbitant amount of payday loan places focused or centralized in areas of extreme poverty.
Now, I didn't really know what a payday loan place was until I met you.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe you should give us a minute and tell us what exactly does a payday loan place do? How does it function?
So a payday loan place, and I'm going to actually open this link here and let's see here. So I'm going to read right off of Investopedia. I may say that wrong. A payday loan is a type of short-term borrowing where a lender will extend high-interest credit based on your income. Its principal is typically a portion of your next paycheck. Payday loans charge high interest rates for short-term immediate credit. They are also called cash advance loans or check advance loans. And so what we need to know about a payday loan is that they are short-term, very high interest rates. Some interest rates are above 400%. And in looking at payday loans, oftentimes they don't tell you, well, this is how much interest you're paying. They kind of just roll it all into a fee. And so it can range anywhere from $10 to $30 based on the $100 that you borrow yourself. But they're looking forward to the check that you are set to get. So you're actually borrowing against that next check that you're going to get. And you should be paying them back from that check. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now that you're mentioning that, I think I actually worked at one of those places when I was in college.
A payday loan place?
Yeah. I didn't know that that's what it was. I had to, this makes me really old. I would type out on the typewriter fake checks that they would send to people to try to entice them to take out a loan against their next paycheck.
Girl, that was Ed McMahon in the clearinghouse.
No. It was a thing. I think I did that as a temp job.
Oh,
like when I was in college.
This maybe, I don't know. I've never.
They wanted people to take out loans against their next paycheck.
Oh,
Like small loans. But it was a very fancy corporate thing. It wasn't in one of those little shops. So
according to the research I've done, I want to say last year, the payday loan industry made something upwards of like $22 million just off of the payday loan people.
wow.
So it's a lucrative industry,
Yeah.
and it is definitely an industry. Let me go to the next. Actually, where are my little? Let's see here. When you think about payday loans, they tend to target areas that are lower socioeconomically, but those areas also tend to be high minority.
Okay.
And so it can look like it's a prey on Black and brown people, but in reality, it's not a target on Black and brown. They'll take your money. They don't care they don't care about the color. It's about the class and the poverty status.
So the key word in that sentence is it can look like a racial disparity and racial targeting, but it's really just targeting any ethnicity who's in poverty.
Yeah. And when you think about the top 4 states that have payday loan places, California is the number 1. Then
I think Bob's got a little map he's going to show us.
I don't think that. No, it's not that one. It's okay.
Okay.
No. California is the number 1. Texas ranks number 2, and then Tennessee and Mississippi.
Okay.
And so California has
That's
nearly
interesting.
2,500 payday loan places, with nearly 80% of them being in the Southern California region,
Wow.
Especially within the Southern Los Angeles region. There's a payday loan place everywhere, sometimes next door to each other. Now, when I just mentioned this and I actually got the number wrong, how big is the payday loan market? The market size measured by revenue was $20.5 billion with a B.
Oh, so not
dollars,
million,
not
20
million. $20.5 billion
Wow.
in 2022. And again, their audience is the poor. It's people who are strapped for cash. And how do they keep them?
Paycheck to paycheck.
It's not even paycheck to paycheck. At some points, it's loan to loan, because now I owe you. So I borrowed, $200 from you. Now I need to pay you back whatever that is plus the interest rate. So now because I can't afford that, in order to not have my wages garnished and have this sent over to a credit, what do you call those things? Like when a credit bureau, not a credit bureau. What do you call those things when they have to go in?
They confiscate your stuff?
Collection agency.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I don't want it to go to a collection agency. So I'm going to go back to these people, and they will incentivize this and say, you need to get another loan to pay off the first loan. So now all you're doing is rolling that debt into another loan with more interest.
Now, I've heard that interest rates at these payday loan places are often higher even than regular loans. Is that true?
Upwards of 400%.
400%?
400%. It is considered predatory lending because the interest rates are so high. Let me actually want to read the correct.
Yeah, Bob's going to put it up here on the screen.
Yeah, so here we are. So payday lenders charge very high levels of interest, as much as 780 in annual percentage rates, with an average loan running at nearly 400%.
That's insane.
Most states have usury laws that limit interest charges to anywhere from 5 to 30%. So when you think of your credit card and you get that, 0% interest, or, you get 0% interest for the first year, and then it jumps to like 19% or something like that, which is crazy. At 19% of interest is crazy.
We don't we don't run balances on credit cards. I have no idea what those interest rates are.
But when I read the fine print. So I do the same thing. Like, I don't run a balance on the card, but I'm going to definitely read all of the fine print to see if I carried it over 1 month, what is the interest rate? It would be like sometimes 12%, 19%. Wow. And so between 5 and 30% is what's considered normal, not exorbitant.
Okay. So usury rates means it's just over the top. It's way too much interest.
Way too much
Predatory.
interest. And it is preying on the poor.
The most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable in our society. And it keeps them poor. So it isn't like, oh, I got this loan and was able to, help lift myself up out of poverty a little bit. Or, I was able to open up a business and I can see this money going somewhere. Yeah. This is, I got a loan to help make ends meet. But at
keep my lights on.
But at the end of the day, the gap is actually larger than if I would have never taken out the loan in the first place. This is an issue in America. This is an issue within, states overall. Now, not every state. There are 16 states in the union that actually ban.
Oh, wow.
They actually ban payday loan places. But for the other states that don't ban payday loan places, we must think about those that they are intentionally preying upon. And how can we as Christians use our voice and our vote and our dollar to say, not in my neighborhood. I know that, in the early 2000s, there was this whole NIMBY movement out here, not in my backyard. And it was regarding a bunch of other things. But how can we say that as believers, like, no, we're not going to allow this to come into our city because we know that people are going to actually be hurt by this. One of the things that that I started to think about was, what does the Bible say about lending to the poor and interest rates and things like that? And
that's interesting.
In Proverbs 14:31, it says, whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. And so what does it mean to oppress? I think that's a key word in that text. But when we look at the scriptures biblically, oppression of a person is to intentionally not allow them to, one, move forward, to be able to grow in their, either in their industry or to be free from usury, from bribery, to be able to live in accordance with the life that God has now called them to.
There's some scriptures, and I don't know them off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure they're in Exodus, but it might even be later in Exodus 23 that I was reading earlier. Mm-hmm. But it talks about if you do make a loan to, your brother, a fellow Israelite in this context, I would put this in our context under the new covenant to a fellow Christian. You can't go to his house and take his donkey or something that is part of, I interpret it as something that helps him make a living.
Yes.
So in our context, I would say you can't take a poor person's car from them as collateral because they need that to go to work.
Yes.
You can't go in and let's say that the poor person has special tools that they use to, I'm just going to use a random example of people that cut your lawn. Mm-hmm. They got a lot of tools to be able to cut their lawn. Mm-hmm. You can't take that poor man's tools away as collateral when you're collecting on a loan.
Yeah.
Because you're taking away their ability to make a living. And I think that this is something that in these predatory lending, it's almost like you're, with 400% interest, you're really siphoning off their ability to recover.
Yeah. And see, so for me, one of the things that I've had to think about is, well, what if these are people who are not believers? So they're just in the culture. The culture's lending to the culture and the culture has no rules. How do we as believers then consider this? So as believers, it says in the Old Testament that Israelites weren't supposed to charge interest to their fellow brothers, and especially to their poor brothers. You don't charge interest to your brothers. And so, as Krista said, when we lend, one, I live from the principle I shall lend and not borrow. So if I give, I'm just gonna give.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. I don't even participate in the lending. But are you okay there?
Yeah, my phone Ever since the last update, makes weird noises.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I know.
But I think as Christians, we should be considering, how do we treat the poor within our community? Are we ignoring some of their needs, and then now they feel like they have no other resource or recourse but to go to the payday lending place? But if you are also poor, how are you making your needs known among your community? How do we come together as family to be able to take care of one another? But looking outside of the Christian sphere, I believe that as Americans, we have what is it that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Payday loan places negate all of that. There is no life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness when you're being charged upwards of 400% interest and you are already living at or below the poverty line. If you have to go and get a payday loan to keep your lights on or to feed your kids, and now they're asking you to take $300 out of your check that might only be $1,000 anyway to pay them back, you have to think about how am I supposed to be able to live without the burden of now owing someone?
Yeah.
And I can look at that person's free autonomy. They didn't have to go there, but it's made so easy. So when you think of a payday loan place, you don't have to have collateral. My credit could be shot to Timbuktu. It can be a mess. And they're not going to ask me for what is your credit score. They're only going to ask me, do you have income? What's your income? And in some places, they don't even ask for your income.
But some of them attach it to the title of your car, which seems clearly unbiblical to me.
But again, this is the culture. And so I don't know that I can attach those standards to them. But like if we were at church and the church gave out a loan and then he was like, well, let me get a piece of your car for this $30, I'd be like, no, that's wrong. But in the culture, I can't go. I don't feel like I have jurisdiction or warrant, as Paul would say, to say, well, you shouldn't be, like, according to my Christian beliefs, sure, but you don't uphold that. If you're a pagan.
But historically, I think, we could look at, and this is the great tension that we live in, is how do we change hearts through the gospel that predatory lending goes against God's principles so that people don't open these places, and the church offers an alternative. There's a great documentary, and I wish I knew the name of it, and I'll try to put it in the comments later after the show, but there's a great documentary about a church in Texas that I saw a number of years ago, that what they're trying to do in their community, that they live in an area in their city where there's a lot of these payday loan places in the near vicinity of the church. And so what they're doing is trying to be an alternative to these payday loan places and restructure the culture and do some things to help people understand, don't make this decision.
Yes.
Don't do this. And so they help them out with microloans, but they do more than just loan them money. They help them with financial literacy and re-education and a lot of other tools. And where does this money go? Helping them start businesses. And, so it's not just falling down a hole to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean,
the church has got to,
I think the church should be
things.
thinking about this. I think the church should be thinking about this first within their own community. And this might be a controversial statement, and that's okay. I'm here for it. I don't know that the church should be running to those in the community to get all their finances right when the people in your own community don't have lights or are living paycheck to paycheck in your church. How are you working as leaders within the church to make sure that the people, your congregation, are financially literate and working toward the betterment of themselves in regards to their finances? When your church is okay, then I would say definitely we extend this out to the community because we have a solid plan in place to be able to help someone else. You got to put on your own oxygen mask first, friends. Yeah. That's not necessarily a popular word, but I would say you help your family. I think the biblical precedent is your family, your church community, and then those who are not a part of the community of faith. And so,
kind of in the spirit of Galatians 6:10, do good to all, especially in the household of faith first, prioritizing. Okay, we got to go faster. Say it's 6:15.
Yeah, it's
Or
what?
6:45.
Yeah, we probably ain't gonna get through all 6.
We
Let's just
got
be honest,
we got to
people.
faster. Okay.
But yeah, so when it comes to predatory lending, I would say that one, we should use our voice, our vote, and our dollar because we are Christian to speak out against things that hurt image bearers. So I'm not speaking out simply because they are hurting other Christians, but they are hurting people created in God's image based on our biblical standards. We understand that this hurts the image bearer. This keeps a person in poverty. This does not elevate a person out of poverty. And then I would say that as believers, we should be doing our best to be financially sound, financially literate, especially within our families and then within our faith communities, and then sharing that with the broader culture.
So Natalie has a related question here. She says,
There's so many comments I didn't even know.
yeah,
Sorry, friends.
let's see. Natalie wants to know, why aren't payday loan places considered usury?
They fall under special laws.
Somebody's answered, because they are written within the confines of the law.
Yeah.
400% interest is within the confines.
It is.
It's a little scary.
It is within the confines of the law. And there have been pushes for things like underwriting payday loans. And under one recent president, no longer the president, one recent president's administration, he didn't want to go down that path. And so the whole underwriting of payday loans is not a thing. It's not required. And that underwriting would consist of, can you actually pay back this loan? That is something that people have fought for. It would be a great idea to have, a conversation of, do you actually think you can pay back this loan?
Kind of like we do with home mortgages.
Yeah.
Can you pay it back?
Can you pay it? Kind of like I would do if I had a kid. Look, you want to borrow $5 to get this bubble gum. Can you pay that back? Like, we need to have real common sense conversations. What they have started to do is allow the borrower how do I want to say this? They've started to advise the borrower when they're going to debit their account. So let's say I missed my payday loan payment, my repayment, and now they're just going to go into my bank account if that's how it was set up, and I wasn't going to pay cash, and I don't actually think you have to have a bank account, but if you do have a bank account and they're going to go now and debit your bank account, they have to give you warning that they are going to go and debit your account, and they can only attempt to debit your account twice and no more. So if they can't get it on those first 2 tries, then at that point, they are just out of luck, but then they can go the collections route.
Okay, you ready to move on?
Let's do it.
All right, so my number 2 is eminent domain. My number 2 injustice is eminent domain. So this is where the government seizes property. And so I'm going to have Bob put up an official definition of eminent domain from HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development here in the United States. This is on an official government website. Eminent domain is an exercise of the power of government, or I love this part of the definition, quasi-government agencies such as airport authorities, highway commissions, community development agencies, and utility companies to take private property for public use. Sometimes these entities may propose to use their eminent domain authority to take public housing property as well. So this is when the government or government adjacent entities seize private property.
What's a government adjacent entity?
Well, that was what I just read. All right, Bob.
I know. I'm asking the question.
Airport authorities, highway commissions, community development agencies, and utility companies.
I missed it. Sorry for.
I know you weren't paying attention. You were looking down there.
Well, I was reading the comments.
I know.
Sorry.
So that's what government adjacent authorities are. So there was a story, and I couldn't find it back. This is what prompted this, is I saw a story recently, and I think it was in the LA Times. It might be behind a paywall or something. But they had a story about some homes that had been seized 60 years ago out in Pasadena. And they were seized allegedly for the purpose of freeway development. Mm-hmm. They never did anything with them.
Oh, I know someone who
They threw all
Yep.
those people out. So what they do is if they just decide, we want this house, this property for XYZ thing that is in the public interest.
Yes.
And that can be very loosely defined. They can just come in and take your property.
So a friend of mine had her house seized under eminent domain because they were building a new police station. They needed her home sat on this tract of homes on this one main road. It was a busy street that she lived on. And so it wasn't just her house, but they took this row of homes and did nothing with those homes. They built the police station. They used one home out of the however many that they took. They used one home. They knocked that home down in the police station. That does actually, part of it is on that land. But then the homes next to it were all knocked down. Eventually, years later, were all knocked down. And this is probably 15, 20 years ago now. And in having knocked down those homes, they sold the land and then built condos on it.
So the government was sort of acting as a property development entity. And so what do they do when they kick people out of their homes? Do they pay them a pittance? Do they just relocate them or give them an opportunity for relocation to a government selected area? Like, how does that work?
In her case, I'm not sure. She was actually my friend's mother.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't have had like those conversations with her. When I think about out in South Central LA, there was an entire government housing place, like a project. Yeah. So there was the projects, and I mean we have multiple projects in LA, or quite a few, and they in this one project, if you still wanted to continue with your Section 8 housing, you had to be relocated. So you went from living in South Central LA, which isn't the best place, but I mean, it's still
they
LA.
Take you out to Rialto or something.
Rialto's like the boondocks. Like, don't nobody want to live in Rialto. And if you do live in Rialto, I'm sorry, but I mean, let's come on now, or, Paris, not Paris with an A, Paris with an E.
It's out in the desert here in Southern California, or Victorville. I know that they moved a lot of people. Yeah,
they moved a lot of people to Victorville and things like that. And so it's kind of just moving the problem to another area. And then I can take this land and sell it, and you see the start of gentrification and things like that, or what people would call gentrification.
So scripturally, here's a few passages for us to consider. Obviously, the basic passage is Exodus chapter 20. The 10 Commandments, you shall not steal. This is really a government-endorsed theft issue. All right, you can scroll down. I think there's another verse down there. No, all right, go to the next link. There's a bunch of verses in the law about theft, but what I like to point out is this practical application in 1 Kings 21. And we won't have time to read all of this, but I encourage you. It's a great example of what I think is like a biblical version of eminent domain. So King Ahab sees that Naboth has a vineyard. He has some property near the castle, and he wants that property. And so he tries to buy it from him. But Naboth says, no, this is the land of my ancestors. And if we were to read through Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, we would read how God had portioned out land to each family and clan, and that the year of Jubilee, that land can revert back to that family so that the family constantly has a way of making a living and supporting themselves. So Naboth says, no, I am not going to sell the land of my ancestors. This is the land given to me by God himself. Okay. And so then scroll down, and then Jezebel comes along, and Ahab's sulking about it. And so Jezebel says, okay, I'll take care of it for you. So she, sends out letters in Ahab's name, basically seizing the property from Naboth and taking him out to be stoned. So since he wouldn't sell the land, now he's going to get killed. This is like the ultimate eminent domain theft of property. And the entire idea of having property is a critical part of God's law. There's a reason why one of the 10 commandments is you shall not steal. The idea of private property is not just a nice idea in American capitalism. It is a foundational idea in God's sense of justice. And to steal someone else's property, whether it's their donkey, which helps them earn a living, in our case, car theft, I think that's a kind of a transcultural equivalent, to steal someone's home, to steal someone's property, is to go against God's justice standard. So that's my number 2.
Okay.
You have any thoughts about that?
I do.
Okay.
But I feel like it would take us down a rabbit trail.
Oh.
That we don't really need to go down.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I mean, so eminent domain would be stealing land. Like, is eminent domain ever necessary or good? Let me say that. Yes.
I mean, anything's possible, but I think that there's enough examples that a large part of the practice is very corrupt. And so I think that maybe, if there was a situation where a just price was paid, where there wasn't coercion in the person selling their land, if they were given a reasonable value on the property that's commensurate with wider standards, I think that could be, a case. But if you're seizing land, I don't know.
To build condos.
Yeah, it's a tough issue, and the whole thing about private property is it is a important part of Scripture. There's another whole rabbit trail we can go down.
That's the rabbit trail that I was going to go down. Who owns
land?
That is the exact one.
All of that, but we'll save that.
That's a rabbit trail for another day.
We'll talk about that another day.
I really think we are twins.
A theology of land.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uncle Jeff has a good comment in here. He says, he said in China, when building the Three Gorges Dam, or I don't know, I probably didn't pronounce that right. The Chinese government displaced and moved 1 million people out of their homes in order to flood the land behind the dam. The few suffer for the many.
Yeah.
And then his second comment says, the few suffer for the greater good, a utilitarian philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough issue. Yeah. So, all right.
Private property is God's idea.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Right,
do one more, or should we go to the second segment since we're already at 7:00?
No, let's do your second one.
Okay. My second one is welfare. And I am just super passionate about the idea of welfare and welfare reform. I teeter back and forth between should we just get rid of it all? And, does it serve any place of good within our society? What does that look like? But when I was thinking about the idea of injustice, I immediately thought about abortion. And so I was going to do the whole abortion thing, and that was going to be my second one. But I was like, we've talked about abortion so much, and people are talking about abortion. I don't know that many people are really talking broadly about the injustice of welfare and how welfare keeps people trapped in a system and what it's done to many communities in regards to fatherlessness and single motherhood. And I'm not just talking within the Black community. The idea of welfare, one started out with the idea that you can't have a man in the home. This is going to come in to help subsidize single mothers and families who can't make it and things like that. But that intentionally or inadvertently took men out of the home. And it doesn't matter what community you're in. When you have high rates of welfare, you generally see high rates of single motherhood. And so the first thing that I want to go to is welfare within California and the Welfare to Work program. And so you can do that one. I want to read just a bit of the top part of it. It says, just as Republicans in Congress are moving to beef up work requirements for people who receive welfare, California lawmakers are moving to do the opposite. Of course, it's California. Included in a recent state assembly budget proposal and in a bill the assembly passed on Wednesday, and this is back from June of this year, is a plan to remake CalWorks, the state's federally funded cash welfare program that requires recipients to work or search for jobs using a list of approved activities. And so what they're referring to is the CalWorks program, and I believe that this is a similar program in other states. But if you receive welfare, one, there are only a certain amount of children that you can have on your cash aid benefit portion. You can have as many children as you yourself have or take care of in your home that can receive food stamps. So the food stamps, you can put a lot more people on food stamps, but when it comes to cash aid, they are specifically looking not to give you cash for like every child. But so if I had 2 children, and at one point, I'm not sure because I haven't been in social service in a minute, but at one point it was 2 children. And then if I had a 3rd child, then I was just kind of SOL, sort of out of luck. Like they would only give me cash for those 2 children.
So if I have, God forbid, let's say I have 2 children, I've maxed out my welfare benefit.
That's how it was at one point in the state of California.
If I would have a 3rd child, if I were to conceive of a 3rd child, it almost seems like there's a little bit of a silent incentive to abort that child, potentially, because I'm not going to get more money to support that child. So then you get in this whole trap conversation of, well, you don't want to have a child born into poverty, and so let's just abort it.
That would be Margaret Sanger's approach. We're not going to go down that path because we only have a few minutes left.
Know.
But yes, that is one of the thoughts behind it. But in order to have CalWorks or a cash aid benefit, and like it's not general relief, which is a different side of welfare. But like if you are a single mother and you have welfare, there is a requirement that you either that you are looking for work and that you are actively, going out, putting in your resume. You have to send over your list of places that you've gone to your social service worker. You need to be, taking resume writing classes and doing all of those kind of things. And so what Republicans want to do in Congress is beef up this requirement. In California, what people want to do is extend or offer more leniency. So instead of, looking for work, I might be working on my mental health. I might be taking this class over here. I might be doing a lot of things that are not necessarily related to work.
It just seems like, though, when people get on welfare, a lot of times, not all, but a lot of times, their quality of life actually goes down.
Well, this is why I say I call it an injustice that I don't think people are talking about, because people don't realize what happens when people begin to receive handouts that you don't have to do anything. You have to work for it or things like that. And if you are on welfare, this isn't a down on necessarily you specifically, but this is to really investigate the system and how is the system helping people who might be taking advantage of this system, able-bodied people who might be able to work. And so California wants to say, instead of having this work component, and it's called CalWorks, maybe we could extend this so that people who are receiving cash benefits can, take this class over here or work on their mental health, or they can do this thing over there. Eventually, what happens is that a person can get used to receiving that aid and not doing anything in return for it. And so to your point of it seems like their quality of life goes down, I honestly believe that it is because humans were meant to work. It's part of God's created order that we would go out, that we would work. And I know like in Genesis, it says that you would till the land, that you would, go out and do these things. But it's that we are active with our bodies and that we are not meant to just receive without work and compensation, forever have been tied hand in hand.
Yeah. I always say work and money go together.
Work and money work and food go together. You know what I mean?
Separate those things out, you go against the created order and things can really go wrong. I just see lack of work is not just a physical problem, it's a soul problem.
It is. And so I completely see it as an injustice that people aren't talking about. When I thought about scripture for it, the one that came to my mind was in Ephesians 4 at the end, where Paul is encouraging those to work so that you may have something to share with those who are in need. And also Genesis, where, I tend to say that Adam had a job before he had Eve, like that work has been since the beginning. How are we considering work? And when we aren't considering work, and when we aren't using our voice, our vote, and our dollar to vote for people, even locally and at state levels, who have ideas and ideologies about work that are in line with scripture, what then are we doing to the image bearer who is receiving the cash aid without any kind of tie to work for it?
Yeah, and I think what you mean is when their vision is not in alignment with scripture.
Sorry, yeah.
So no, I totally agree. And I think that it's an injustice because it really does harm people's souls. It sends the wrong message. And it's a tough issue. I did a teaching recently on my channel about discipling our children when it comes to work. So that would be a good kind of follow-up to this discussion.
I don't think people are aware of how many people are on welfare. California, I think still today leads the pack in all of the 50 states in regards. Maybe Alaska might be first, but it's kind of, I think, between Alaska and California, and how many people are on welfare, how many people are receiving food stamps. And so when we look at this, and this is only food stamps, it's SNAP. It is Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, I believe is what SNAP stands for. In California, there's 1.9 million. In Florida, there's 1.6. And so you can see the list. There is also a cash aid graph that I saw there. And if I remember correctly, I believe that it is California that leads the union and how many people we have on cash aid. I remember when I was and this is just a tangent, my last thing that I'll say, but I remember when I was first starting to study sociology, it was my Sociology 101 class, and I did a report on welfare. And in many of the states at the time, and this was probably like the year 2000, 2001, many of the states, the amount of money that you could receive on welfare was double the minimum wage rate. And
so a little de-incentivizing.
It was de-incentivizing to work. Now, since then, there have been welfare reforms and, shifts in welfare, I'll say that. So I don't know if that's true. I haven't dug that deep into it. But the idea of work is deeply connected to scripture. And we have to think about, how do we assist people? I never want to be so rude as to just be like, well, they on welfare, just kick them off. Like, I don't think that that's helpful.
But I also don't think that strict handouts are helpful either.
And I agree with that. But I think that there has to be a well thought out way in which we remember that the person who has been receiving these benefits for 10 years is still an image bearer.
Yeah.
They're still going to need to eat at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And to a degree, we have to recognize that we've dug ourselves into this pit.
And we've trained people to think a certain kind of way that's very harmful to them. So it's going to take some time and effort and patience to retrain, redisciple, all of that. So, all right, really quickly, my number 3 was human trafficking. The Bible condemns man snatching both in the Old and New Testament. And we're going to have some content coming up in the next few weeks related to human trafficking. So we'll cover that in detail. Then your number 3 was?
I was kind of in between abortion and prostitution.
Okay.
I have had a couple of conversations this week and did a webinar. I attended a webinar on prostitution, and just how...
Which is sort of related to human trafficking.
Yeah, and so when I saw that, I was like, oh, maybe I should do abortion. And I wasn't doing abortion specifically like the act. I was doing Planned Parenthood's well thought out plan of putting abortion locations specifically in Black and brown communities. Not even, and this I'm not saying it's like on a class line of, you know, they're in the poor communities. It looks more at who are the Black and brown and where are the Black and brown communities. And if they are not specifically within a Black and brown community, they are usually within walking distance to a Black and brown community.
Very good.
So, yeah, that was it.
And I know you're going to have some content coming soon
On off code.
Off code related to that. So those are each of our 3. Again, this is not an exhaustively complete list, but these are some of the things that Monique and I talk about from time to time as we're on the road and making observations. And again, the spirit behind all of this is we don't want to be known as Christians as simply people who tear down the critical social theories. As much as we need to come against godless frameworks, I'm all for it. I'm here for it. But we also have to make sure that we're having a good amount of energy making our case for biblical injustices and biblical justices. Mm-hmm. That could be another show.
Yeah.
To really define our terms, to understand what qualifies as a justice or injustice. Hopefully we've spurred your thinking a little bit along these lines.
Awesome.
Okay, you ready for...
Let's do it.
The tweet.
Oh.
The video.
I didn't know it was a tweet. Okay. Yeah, we
right.
can just pull up the video.
Huh? Oh, yeah. Let's play the ad. And we'll be right back with the tweet of the week.
It's time to prepare. Let's get ready for the journey ahead. Life doesn't give us a redo. We don't get to run it back. Along the way, we will face obstacles and challenges, but we are carrying light into the dark places. Our paths and our destinations are different, but our beginning is the same. We must prepare. This is why Impact 360 Institute exists. Get ready to grow, to stand firm, to be who God created you to be, to lead with courage, truth, and love. This experience will transform your life. Be challenged to grow your faith. Learn how to think, not what to think. Build community with those seeking to live like Jesus. Establish spiritual rhythms, discover how to be and make disciples. And put your faith into action. As you prepare for the journey ahead, deepen your understanding of what God has revealed about reality and why Christianity is true. Discover your identity in Christ and your God-given calling in authentic community. Cultivate a servant's heart and live a life of spirit-empowered kingdom influence.
Make sure to check out our friends at Impact 360 at impact360.org and consider sending your child to either a 1 week, 2 week, or 9-month gap year program where they get a deep training on their biblical worldview. Also, since we're talking about biblical worldviews, not sure if you've heard, but Dr. Joe Miller, he's been on our show a few times, and he sits on the Academic Advisory Council for the Center for Biblical Unity. He and I are going to do a 6-week worldview live stream. And so once a week, we're going to hop on and just talk about worldviews. We're going to be going through James Sire's book, The Universe Next Door, and you can check out the Center for Biblical Unity for more information on that. We're going to start marketing on that this week and let you know the times and all of that. You'll also see videos from Dr. Joe Miller on worldview. He's created a whole series of worldview videos. So we just want to start the conversation. The book, The Universe Next Door, has been a super impactful book in my life. And so I want to share that with others.
Cool. All right. Now, in the news this week, I see many crazy things on Twitter, which now I can't even call it the tweet of the week anymore because Twitter doesn't exist anymore. Now it's X, and I don't know what we're going to do about that. But there was a great video this week. A young man had a patch on his backpack, went to his school. He goes to a charter school, which is technically a public school. But he is 12 years old. He's a middle schooler. Shows up with a backpack. He's got a lot of patches on his backpack. He's running for vice president of his student class and all of this. Well, one of his patches is the Gadsden flag. The Gadsden flag is the one that says, "Don't tread on me." It's the yellow one with the serpent. It says, "Don't tread on me." So we're going to see what happens when he gets called into the principal's office, he and his mother, to talk about this patch that apparently is a problem for the school.
Thank you.
Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That it's a historical flag?
So there, the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed, is due to its origins with
the
slavery and slave trade. That is what was, that's the reasoning behind why we do not want it displayed.
The Gadsden flag.
The "Don't tread on me."
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag. Okay. So he's what's going to happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class. Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back. It's got the patch on it because we can't have that in and around other kids. So that's what I was trying to, and then he said you were close. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery. That's like the Revolutionary War patch that was displayed when they were fighting the British. Like that's the revolution. Maybe you're thinking of like the Confederate Confederate flag.
Okay, I am
Is there
just here
history
to
that you
enforce.
can tell me?
No, I am here to enforce the policy that was provided by the district.
Okay.
And definitely, you have every right to not agree with it. I mean,
Yeah, because the
absolutely.
ACLU says that he's allowed to wear that. If you like go on their website, it's like says in big
So,
letters.
all I'm saying is that
Unless there's like a ban on patches, period. Like if you said there's no patches allowed at the school, you cannot display what you think or anything like that, or what cheer or anything like that. I think it's like one-sided, because you allow some patches but not other
Other
patches.
kids have patches, like other names, some like the American flag and backpacks.
Yeah. That was like flown during the revolution with, I just don't understand that at all.
so what I can do is
And if you go onto the ACLU's website, let's talk to
I
someone.
can
'cause I don't
have
want
you
a
speak
lawsuit. I really don't.
to I can have you speak to Jeff Yoakum
Okay.
again.
Okay.
And then he can refer you to our person at the district.
Okay.
Because, like I said, we're following district policy, is what we're doing. So, the last thing I want is him out of class.
Yeah, I know.
That's all
He
the last
takes
thing I
his
want.
classes seriously.
Yes.
He studies. He wants to get straight A's. He did that. He made honor roll when he was here before.
Yep.
He intends to do that again right now, but it's hard because he keeps missing class for this. So
I understand that.
yeah, and I mean we teach him to always stick up for your beliefs. And I mean you're going over the revolution for 7th grade. I mean the founding fathers stood up for what they believed in against unjust laws. This is unjust.
Okay. Like I said, we're upholding a policy that was provided to us, which we have to uphold.
Okay, can you show me?
Okay.
Okay. So I had Bob play the whole thing because many of the news outlets are only playing clips. I'm always one for context. But I have a couple of observations I want to make. But first of all, from you, that's the first time you've seen the whole thing. What are your thoughts?
I mean, first of all, that little baby foot was cute.
I think
And-
the mom was hiding the camera in the stroller.
I mean, good for that mom for standing up for her kid and not taking that. No, we're not taking the patch off. if you have all these other...
I'm sure if there was a pride flag, it would...
And I am sure there probably is a pride flag flying in one of their classrooms somewhere. But again, we don't play by partiality. And I'm not going to have my kid, treated poorly or oddly or seen to be the one that gets to get picked on because he has a more quote unquote conservative sticker on his backpack. You can get over it.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that the governor of Colorado, which this kid goes to school in Colorado Springs, and the governor of Colorado, who is a Democrat, tweeted out to him that he was behind the kid.
Yeah.
And he supported the kid. And a very liberal person in the California Senate, Ted Lieu, who is behind a lot of those gender bills that we're always complaining about. He also tweeted out he was supporting the kid with the Gadsden flag.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow, this is so interesting because the thought line is, well, he can't have this flag on his backpack because it's connected to slavery. The teacher seemed, or the principal, whoever that school administrator was, didn't seem like she really knew.
She seemed uneducated.
Yeah, what the Gadsden flag was even about.
Yeah.
And yet it was objectionable. Slavery.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to use the trigger word slavery and then these people are going to cave. I don't know.
I'm just glad that the mother stood by her kid and was like, hey, look, we can have a civil conversation about this, but not today and not on my watch. We're not just going to bow because you have these woke policies or this, liberal leftist agenda and ideology and expect that my kid has to participate with it when you guys play by these same rules. And in reality, it's not that he's breaking any rule. It's just that you don't like what he has on his backpack.
Yeah, I think that's really why I wanted to play the clip is the mom. The mom, we get so many letters at the ministry, particularly from moms, almost always from moms, saying, how can I have this XYZ hard conversation with a school administrator and have it not ruffle any feathers? And you and I are always saying, that's the wrong goal.
Ruffle the feathers. I'm here for a feather fight. Go ahead.
That's not the right goal. And I think this mom is a great example, and I'm putting it out there to all the moms, of like, go have the harder conversation. Don't be afraid. Know your facts. Bring facts. Stay calm. But please be courageous. We can, unless we push back against these ideas, we will be overrun by them. And I think this mom provides a great example. It's not just the principle of she stood up for her kid. It's that she stood up against the ideology that is trying to run all of us over.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to do more. We need more courage. This is a great example of courage. But if you make the goal, how do I have the conversation without ruffling any feathers? That's not the right goal. You've got to get strong in yourself and to know how to tackle these things and have the harder conversation.
Future has some good comments. Says, please let me see the district policy where it says no Gadsden flag.
That would have been my first question.
Yeah, let me see it.
The administrator kept saying, well, this is our policy. This is our policy.
Yeah.
Show me the policy.
Yeah, because I'm sure you had to have a policy book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is this policy?
Yeah. And then,
that would have been my first question.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just...
Monique's about to stuff a pillow with all the feathers.
Don't play no games. I'm here for the feather fight. All right, you guys, it has been a great evening to hang out with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us as we talk about injustice. We will see you again in, I believe, 2 weeks.
We are on the road next week. We're in the Dallas area for the Maven Conference.
Yes.
So if you're going to the Maven Conference in the Dallas area, come see us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Go to mavenconferences.com.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
Thank you.